I think my screen is telling me that the recording has started. I hope that is okay for everyone now. My name is Otto Longvik, and I work as a research coordinator at Novia University of Applied Sciences. I welcome everyone to this ABUA Tech Talks entitled Novel and Sustainable Foods. I will very briefly, open the mini seminar by maybe putting our title in context of the development in our society recently. When I was thinking at the title yesterday, preparing this, I wanted to raise two different aspects here. The first one is maybe for me a bit closer, the bioeconomic development, and previously when I was more in the education, I also tried to always relate the bioeconomy to this national definition of bioeconomy. My way of putting it is that we have 4 different fields of bioeconomy in Finland. We have the materials, mostly based on lignocellulosic materials. We have the second is the primary production of food. Third one is energy, and the sector 4 is services. There includes, for example, tourism and well-being and things like this. So we are the title of today, Novel and Sustainable Food. I think that is very much related to bioeconomy because we have the primary production of food there in the bioeconomy sector. And the bioeconomy is very important for our nation, and not only for Finland, but for whole Europe and also in a global scale. The second aspect of the society development and in related to our topic of today is the sustainability. And I normally divide the sustainable development in 3 different sectors: the ecological, economical, and sociological sectors. So of course, our title is with sustainability, and some of the presentations are taking this into account more. For example, I think also the economic aspects will be mentioned today here. So this is the brief context of our presentations and the title of today. So I hope this is a good introduction. I want to go forward by presenting our first speaker today, Katri Järvinen-Vilén. Her current title is ESG manager at Raisio Group. She has soon been at Raisio for 7 years. Including her tasks at Raisio is for example, leading Raisio Group corporate responsibility work, CO2 reduction, the calculations related to that, and environmental target settings. She has also many other duties, of course, but to raise a few of them. Previously, she has been working at Microsoft and Nokia, and she has also an exam, chemical engineering exam. I think it was from 2002 at Åbo Academy, and also later she has been studying and has an exam in economics. Her title of today is Sustainable Food, a Food Industry Perspective. I give the floor to Katri. Please, Katri.
Yes, thank you, Otto. Hope you're hearing me well. Yes. Yes, and as Otto introduced, so yeah, I'm the ESG, so that comes from the Environmental, Social and Governance Manager at Raisio Group. And speaking today a bit from the kind of the concept of sustainable food, but from a kind of the food industry and food company perspective. I think the introduction that you, Otto, gave was really good about the different ways and the different aspects of both of the sustainability and the bioeconomy. So there is many many sites about it, and I'm going to go through a little bit how we see that at Raisio. But first to get no slides changing. Interesting.
While you're changing the slide, I think there was a note here in my screen that when we had more people coming, I announced in the beginning that this seminar is recorded. So please note for everyone that the seminar is recorded. So I think there was a note in my screen that I hope everyone understood that. But please continue.
Yeah. So a few words about Raisio as a company. You probably, maybe most of you know Raisio, and if not the company as such, so I think everybody here in Finland knows some of our products. But anyway, it's already established in the 1933. We have the head office here at Raisio, and nowadays around 350 employees, most of them in Finland, but also in other countries. And here this is a company presentation, so you can see here also that we are using a lot of carbon neutral energy that I will speak more about in the next slides. And here also that we are, in addition to Finland, we have markets in UK, Poland, Ireland, Ukraine, and Estonia are the biggest other countries that we are active in. And what we do at Raisio, it's basically healthy and sustainable food. So we have the brands that you probably most of you know. So we have Elovena, Benegol, Härkis, then we have Sunnuntai and Nalle, and the Torino pastas also. So we have a kind of the heart friendly food. We have the Benecol, which is based on the plant stanol ester, which is a cholesterol lowering substance. And then we have, on the other hand, we have the plant proteins, which are usually sold in under the Härkis brand. And then we have the oat and grain-based products, for example, Elovena Sunnuntai brand, and different kind of ingredients made of those products. We have production sites in here at Raisio. We have the new plant-based factory, or it's 2.5 years old now, making the vegan and dairy-free products, mainly drinks and spoonables, as we call them. And then we have a production site at Kauhava, where we make the plant proteins. And then we also have a huge oat mill at Nokia. And just shortly showing you the brands that you, I think most of you know. So there's the healthy food and then the healthy ingredients. Okay, and then a little bit, well, not so little bit, a lot, maybe as much as I have time, I could speak about this subject, but mainly how do we see that what is basically sustainable food? And there, when we speak about sustainable food, we have this our strategic sustainability program, the Good Food Plan. And there you can see we have 5 key projects that we are actually kind of driving the sustainability. And here we have trying to be taking account the different sides of the sustainability. So we have the product packagings, we have the environmental and climate actions. Then we have the perspective of healthy food. We have the sustainable food chain, and then also our employees, the food professionals. And the sustainability is a combination of all of these aspects and maybe also many more. And you can't really, this is what makes it so complicated, but you can't really have a sustainable kind of product or a sustainable company without taking in account all of these aspects. I'm presenting some of these topics really shortly, and then going more into the details about the, for example, the sustainable food chain, and then also the climate actions that we have, because I think in this context they are maybe the most interesting ones. But shortly about the packaging. So there we are trying to find packaging that is recyclable and made of renewable or recycled materials, and then trying to reduce the amount of plastic, and then also educate the consumers through the product packaging how to use it kind of on the sustainable way and how to recycle the packaging. And here, because we are part of the food chain, we are in the food industry. So for us, the packaging, kind of the main purpose of the packaging is to protect the food. So that makes it a bit complicated to find solutions, for example, with recycled materials, because it's strictly standardized, and of course from our perspective we don't in any case want to kind of jeopardize the food safety. Then food professionals, of course, our own people. Sorry. There we want to have our employees working according to our culture and our purpose, and support the healthy lifestyle of the employees. Maybe that's shortly about that. And then getting into the maybe more issues that are more relevant today. So the healthy food aspect that I shortly explained. So there with the healthy food, we mean food that is healthy in many ways for the people. We are trying to produce more plant-based products. We are mainly in the plant-based business, but trying overall to provide healthy and climate-friendly alternatives for the diet. And then we have this target that 80% of our products will be healthy alternatives. And that means basically that we are, for example, here in Finland, we have the heart sign on the products, which is telling about that the product is a kind of the healthy alternative. And it's not only, here again, it's not only one aspect on the food, it's so that it needs to, the salt levels has to be low, it can't have too much sugar, there should be a certain amount of fibers, kind of good fiber in the product, and also the amount of fat and the type of fat needs to be healthy. And all the criteria are found that we are using are based on the nutritional science, and also those mostly on the, for example, on the heart sign criteria. And then we are, as I said, trying to increase not only kind of the plant-based alternatives. We have plenty of them because we are so much into the oat and grain type of products, but also to have the plant-based protein alternatives and, for example, recipes around that so that people would be able to easily change towards the more climate friendly and at the same time more healthy diet. Then the sustainable food chain, this is a really important aspect today because the whole sustainability thinking is shifting more towards not only what we are doing at Raisio, but what is happening on the supply chain, how and where we are sourcing the raw materials and how are they produced. So, for example, we are working a lot with our suppliers and also because we are really much into the grains. Here in Finland, we are buying most of the grains, or actually all of the grains that are such that are grown here in Finland that we are using. So we are buying them from Finland, but then there is certain type of grain products that we are using that, for example, the durum grain used in the pastas. So those we have to source from other countries, but basically most of the grains are coming from Finland. So we are working together with the farmers, trying to find solutions for the more sustainable farming practices, for example. And then also with the different environmental and climate actions, if you are thinking about not the farming industry, but for the producing industry, so they're also with the actions that are more kind of environmentally friendly. Then also quite a new topic for us is the biodiversity, and then there also the actions are concentrating, or the biggest effects is not at our production sites, but they are further down in the supply chain. And then lastly, but of course not leastly, we have the environmental and climate action project that we are doing. There we had the first target was to have our own production, all the sites that they would be using the carbon neutral energy. And we did achieve that target by the end of last year, a few months ago. That is meaning that we found new energy alternatives, all of them based on the bio energy, and then also, well, electricity is a different issue there. That is also carbon neutral, but that's not kind of bioenergy. But anyway, so finding bioenergy-based solutions for the energy production for all of our sites. And then also the next step is moving more towards the supply chain and working with the emissions with our whole supply chain, trying to firstly evaluate the effect of the supply chain and then reduce the emissions over there. And also the last one is an interesting and important thing. It's the reduction of food loss and waste. And a kind of inside that is built the ideology of circular economy. So that how can we produce less waste, and how can we utilize the side streams of our products, maybe between the different factories that we have, or then buy some external partner, and then also how can we find more a kind of better ways to utilize the raw materials that we are already using. Yes, yeah, there would be a lot more, but maybe here just shortly you can look at the highlights of the last year about how we achieved our targets, but maybe we leave some time for the discussion. If we have some questions, maybe.
Thank you, Katri. I think this was very interesting and enlightening presentation. I can take questions from the audience also. I have a few questions myself, so if I'm bold enough, maybe I could start. Please, we are anyway quite many here now, so I think it's good to try to raise the hand by using the raise hand function in Teams. I hope you find that. But while you're looking for how to raise your hands, I could maybe start. How do you, Katri, find because you're active in the food sector, and as you mentioned, quite many of the things there in this sector are standardized and regulated by authorities and things like this. Do you see the regulations and the standardization issues as an obstacle or a threshold for developing this sustainability and this new product, or do you find it as an secure way of being able to produce or to be able to produce the product in a secure and for consumer beneficial manner, or do you find it as a positive or a negative aspect, the standardization and regulatory things in your sector?
Yeah, well, I would say both, because when we are thinking about, I would say if you think about the food safety, of course, that is something that we are taking so much, granted, that is something that we're just discussing internally about the different risks and where can you take risks. And food and the employee safety is something that we have like a zero tolerance for the risk. So in a way, how would I say, the company and I think the food sector culture is so that the food safety is something that we are not, there we don't take risk, and I wouldn't say that is something that would so much be an obstacle in a way, but the other type of regulation, for example, I think for the for example, the waste legislation is really strict in Finland, and thinking about the circular economy, for example, and the possibilities to reuse some type of material and maybe testing. So there is that can get quite complicated. And of course, in a way, you could see as a food safety issue, but if that's also maybe something that we don't even would like to risk, but is, for example, the use of recycled materials in the packaging, as I said. So, yeah. But yeah.
Want to add something still?
Yeah, I was saying that they are a kind of obstacles, but usually we have a kind of found the way to go around them, but of course it's a bit making the progress maybe slower, I would say, in some cases, but not of course. Yeah.
I think we have a question from the audience. Kaisa is, please, Kaisa.
Thank you, and thank you, Katri, for the interesting presentation. It's really great to hear again that Raisio is producing and taking so much attention to healthy and sustainable choices. I have a question about using the domestic raw materials as we operate so far in the north, that the seasons may be quite different from each other and the weather is not always so optimal for producing all kinds of crops. So do you at Raisio see a lot of this season-to-season variation or lot-to-lot variation in your raw material, and how do you tackle this task?
Yes, we do see that, and we also see that that the climate change has to do with that as well, because we are, and you can see it quite clearly here in the southern Finland and near we are kind of usually buying the grains from the area near Raisio and the area near Nokia factory. So yes, there is a lot of seasonal change, of course, but we also unfortunately have been kind of we think that it's also the climate change which is affecting the crop levels and making it harder, because there can be, if it's really wet, there can be some kind of microbiological problems with the grains, for example. And the way that we are trying to tackle it is of course that we are trying in some year we have also, stock levels is something that we need to make sure that we have enough stock, and then also that we grow the area where we are buying the grains, and then thirdly, of course, that we are trying to work together with the farmers and trying to find out maybe the new methodologies for growing the grains, and so that it would be more kind of resilient with the farming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Let's take one question more. I think this will be the last question. I think Teija Alenius, you raised the hand. Please, Teija.
Yes, hello, grant writer or research specialist from Novia. I was just curious, do you have some example? You said that you promote biodiversity in cooperation with the stakeholders or suppliers. What kind of cooperation do you have?
Yeah, so I said that that's a kind of new subject for us and something that we are starting to work with, and also trying to figure out ways first to maybe measure also the biodiversity, that how could you kind of set measures for the biodiversity, and then also how to include it in the cooperations with the whole supply chain, basically. But we are in the start of the journey there, so I can't give you too many examples yet, or I can't really give you any practical examples, because we are just starting with that. But wanted to mention it because that's something that is a kind of quite heavily on the agenda nowadays as well. So it's coming to, there are kind of there's the climate issues, and then there is the kind of second big issue on the kind of environmental side is of course the biodiversity.
Thank you. Huge topic.
Yes, it is. I have to say that we are exactly on our schedule, very precise. Thank you for keeping the time. It was very enlightening, and thank you for the discussion also. Thank you for the questions. Let's go forward in our program. It was interesting here at the first presentation that the topics of biodiversity and climate change was mentioned, because next we will have Joshua Finch giving a presentation. I think climate change and this biodiversity environmental issues is very high on enlightened in his presentation. I don't know, but let's see. Joshua's title at Novia University of Applied Sciences is currently project leader. He entitles himself also as an agroecologist. He has designed the first commercial farm in Finland to utilize permaculture design, which is, I think, very interesting. I hope you have the time to maybe present a little bit more of the permaculture or discuss it at least at the end. His practical project objectives include, for example, to overcome social challenges and adaptation to climate change. These are topics that he's very interested in. He just small details from his background. He has also studies on an exam in arts. From in his background, and I want to mention that the exam is from the University of South Florida, United States. So he has traveled and have experience from different climates also himself. I think it's much warmer in South Florida than in Finland. But today, Joshua's title of the presentation is Feet on the Ground with the Generative Agriculture. Please, Joshua, the screen is all yours.
Well, thank you, Otto. I really appreciate that you introduced me so I don't have to do it myself. And I'm kind of dreading my dog starting to bark, but maybe he's already heard all the sounds that he needs to hear. So let me see if I can get my screen sharing and go to the slideshow. Is it up? I can see Otto. Can you give me a thumbs up?
Yes, the screen is just fine, at least here in my...
Okay, excellent. All right, well, thank you for the introduction. Today, so the topic of my talk is Feet on the Ground with Regenerative Agriculture. And this is a really big topic. So agriculture accounts for the majority of our land use around the world. Agriculture is the driving factor behind a lot of the degradation that we see over the last few thousand years. Land degradation and climate change has been accelerated recently, but we humans have been altering our environment for a very long time. And so for my talk today, I had to decide what I would actually focus on. And this is where this feet on the ground comes in. I want to get out of the stratosphere, talking about carbon, methane, emissions, these high level kind of talks around what agriculture needs to do, and just bring regenerative agriculture to you as I see it. And I'll try to do that in the 20 minutes that I've been allotted. So let me start with some bold claims that degradation or degeneration is actually the norm. So I'm not just showing these because I've been here, but once you learn something about how agriculture could look in different climates around the world, it does become hard to travel. So the first pictures on the top are both from Ireland. The one on the top left is from County Clare. It's beautiful while you're there, but when you realize that Ireland used to be covered in temperate rainforests, some of which, remnants of which still exist in places. The top right image is from one of the few remaining semi-natural national parks there in Ireland. You get a very stark contrast between human-managed landscapes and places where humans have done a little bit less. And if we go further south, down to Italy, this photo was taken in October, which in this region of Italy is still a growing season. You can see the green dotting the hillside. And you can even see some solar panels in the bottom center of this valley. Some farmer has some solar panels. But solar panels are mimicking leaves. They're mimicking photosynthesis. And the vast majority of this farmscape is bare tilled ground. And if you're a wine aficionado, or you care about products from Italy more generally, we should be concerned when we see that during an active growing season, we see so much bare ground. And you don't have to just take my word for it. This is something that's been written about ad nauseum. The International Panel on Climate Change. You can find hundreds of pages talking about land degradation. And the only thing that I want to highlight here is that we're talking about around a quarter of the Earth's ice-free land has land degradation. And that's, of the medium level confidence. This is something that depends on how you define things, but this is a major problem. And so when I talk about regenerative agriculture, I'm not talking about regenerative agriculture as simply an alternative choice that perhaps is something we should adopt. Regenerative agriculture is something that absolutely must be adopted across the world. Otherwise, we are not going to have an ecosystem that can support us much longer. So we take a look at Farmscape in Finland. This is from near the Russian border in the southeast of the country. You can ask ourselves when we drive around or we take the train, we're riding a bicycle, is this regenerative? I just want you to think about that for a second. Can you tell from a photograph whether or not what you're looking at is regenerative? And the answer to that is, well, there's more than one opinion about regenerative agriculture and it's context dependent. So first things first, regenerative agriculture does not have a widely agreed upon definition. There's a lot of haggling going on about what is to be included, what should be in there, absolutely, what should be optional. And at the same time that we're debating what regenerative agriculture is, there are a lot of people who don't think that such a thing even exists, that there's no such thing as regenerative agriculture, and that the idea that people can accelerate and improve our ecosystems is not supported by science. So although there's a lot of evidence for regenerative agriculture, it's so contextual that it's still possible for well-meaning people to look at that evidence and say that they don't see it yet. So I want to raise that issue up, that some people don't think that this is possible. I disagree with them, strongly disagree with them, but they're out there and you should know that they're there. And when we think about a definition, we have to understand that just like when I was putting together this talk, if I got too narrow on what I'm going to talk about, it might interest a few of you, but it wouldn't interest very many. At the same time, if I went too broad, then perhaps regenerative agriculture and my presentation would be meaningless. So we have this conundrum and we have this debate going on. So that's the time for us to raise our own voices and our own experience and say, well, what do we think that this means? So from my perspective, what could regenerative agriculture actually be? Well, for me, regenerative agriculture is a state of being for a farm and for a region. So it's not something that is static. You will either be in a regenerative state or you will not. So I have two main things that I want to highlight here. First is that key life processes or ecosystem processes like a local water cycle, local carbon cycle. Yes, carbon should be sequestered into our soils. We've lost the majority of our soil carbon in the last 100 years or so with intensified agriculture using fossil resources to do that. But carbon needs to cycle. It's actually the currency that life on Earth uses. So we're not looking at creating a situation where we want the carbon to be locked away forever, at least not all of it. And also biodiversity is extremely important. So these three things are kind of at the core of regenerative agriculture. And a lot of people would agree on these three things. Interestingly enough, they don't really seem to have much to do with farming at the first glance. If you're not really up on farming, you notice I'm not talking about crops yet. We're talking about the basal ecological issues that allow for agriculture to take place in the, so there's two little caveats here. So you're either actively improving these types of benchmarks compared to your baseline conditions. So you're in an upward trajectory. You're not in a static or a semi-static or a degenerative. You're in an upward motion against your own baseline conditions. What was it like when you started making changes? Or perhaps you may have saturated your soils with CO2. There's a lot of talk about the fact that maybe some of the calculations about soil carbon sequestration are over-optimistic, that you will saturate them at some point. And okay, that's definitely possible that we could reach a plateau of how these things could function. But when we're talking about starting from a degraded position, that I will be extremely happy to stand on top of that level ground of a plateau and look down from where we started from, because the changes can be quite dramatic. And there's another aspect to this that's really, really important for me, which begins to perhaps overbroaden regenerative agriculture and move into agroecology, is that the people's lives are improving. Because honestly, I don't care about regenerative agriculture. I care about whether or not people in our societies are healthy and they're meaningful lives for people to be living. That's what I'm after. That's why I'm doing regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is not my goal. My goal is that my child, that my family, my community has a future going forward. So that's a really key part, and that's beginning to be a bit of a split when people talk about regenerative agriculture. You can really measure those first things in the A subheading, but it's very difficult often to measure parts in the B. And what I want to highlight here on the left is a chunk of soil from a farmer in Espoo. We've got our earthworm. 5 or 6 years ago, you would be hard-pressed to find a single earthworm anytime you dug. Now he's got them because he's feeding them. You can see these tunnels. I don't know if you can see my cursor. You can see these burrows. Did you know that there's some research that shows that these earthworm tunnels in cold, temperate climates can last upwards of 30 years? These are stable structures that are actively being regenerated. The earthworm doesn't live 30 years, but the earthworm and the earthworm's, offspring maintain that below ground infrastructure for the soil. And we can see the legacy of his previous, landscape use down below. Do you see this here? This is a little bit of some straw from some cereal, probably a wheat that hasn't decomposed in years because the soil is not healthy. But he's beginning to make changes, and getting started was so important. Now, this slide is just to say that regenerative agriculture is not a thing or a set of practices. It's not no-till. It's not animals on the land. It's not one thing or another. Regenerative agriculture is an ongoing, dynamic process that you're either working towards, or you're inside that state, or you're not. And what that means is that it needs to be, oh, she popped past me there. Let's see. There we go. Sorry. There should be measurable progress about whether a farm is regenerative or not. Now, I do want to add a caveat to this and say that farmers are not necessarily scientists, and farmers don't necessarily have the resources to document measurable progress, repeatable progress across their farms, despite being mandated every 5 years to take a soil test. So just because something has not been measured doesn't mean that progress hasn't been made. So I don't want to exclude farmers who are not in a position to thoroughly document, because this is a big issue with regenerative agriculture. It encompasses a lot of different moving parts. And so how are we going to measure this is the outstanding question. That's my friend Jan, who got me started in farming. So he had an organic farm. I'll put that on there for you. We're lagging here. Okay. So why would farmers be interested in this? Because I haven't really mentioned anything about farming yet. So this is a photograph from my old farm in Espoo as well. And what you can see here, as opposed to, and I have to kind of hit on Otto a little bit here, because our promotional image with the maize coming up out of bare ground, oh no, the soil's not covered. But you can see here that there's no bare ground. So the ground is always covered in some kind of organic matter. And this is a market garden growing vegetables. So in this kind of scenario, we need to actually be able to work around the plants. So we don't have a lot of bulky mulch except in the pathways between. Oops, moving around. And one thing I also want to highlight is that when you start going down the regenerative path, you realize that you're really working with photosynthesis. And on the left, if you're a bit of a gardener, you might see I have 3 different species growing in an intercrop. In a relay intercrop, we have salad and we have bok choy, which is an Asian green. We've got red salad, so 2 kinds of lettuce, which actually matters. The different cultivars growing together is better than one just by itself. And so we have 2 different plant families that'll be harvested together, delivered fresh to the customers. And then once they're gone, Those tall green guys that look like garlic, well, they're garlic. The garlic will be harvested. So I'm using the land really efficiently in this scenario. You can get into this intensified agriculture when you have functioning soil ecologies, water infiltration holding capacities, balanced nutrition. So we get higher quality crops. Many of my customers often repeated to me once, one actually joked and said, you know why I didn't buy kale from you this week? This was a professional chef at a high-end restaurant in Helsinki. He pulled out kale that I had delivered to him 3 weeks ago. This was a few years back. And he said, can you guess when you delivered this? And I said, I don't really remember. He said, well, this was 4 weeks ago. And it looks like you brought it in yesterday. High quality crops, there's a difference. There is a real measurable difference. And you can also get comparative yields with less outside inputs. You don't have to use no inputs, but this generally improves profitability. Yields become more stable when you have healthier soil and a healthier agroecosystem. You can grow a broader range of crops. I had to actually reduce the range of crops that I used to grow because people didn't know what I was growing and they weren't used to having it available so early. All right, so people are already kind of used to a scenario in which we don't have diversity available, despite being, used to the supermarket. We can also support a lot more animals. So I haven't had the opportunity yet to work with animals on farms, but farms that do use sort of soil health principles and a regenerative approach generally find that they can greatly increase the total number of animals that they support, not just domesticated animals, but also wildlife on the farm. I think I'm lagging again here. And higher profits. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure why it keeps doing this, but regenerative agriculture also, the bottom line is that your bottom line improves. And since we generally see that farmers have very poor profitability or no profitability unless you bring the subsidies into the equation, anything we can do to give farmers profits so they have wiggle room and operational capacity so they can do more change. This is a cumulative kind of growing journey that farmers are on. So how does all of this work? So this image, I'm really happy about this one because very often when you take pictures on a farm, you end up getting someone's backside. And in this one, actually, this was one of my students that summer, this Paik at the top. He's harvesting zucchini. And I can tell that he's got a very good eye for farming. He's actually still farming and working with forestry and becoming an arborist. Down at the bottom, he's put my zucchini, or our zucchini, in the shade of a tall emergent flower that we sold for cut flowers, so that those zucchini begin to drop their temperature even before they go into the cold storage. So there's all of these things that go into regenerative agriculture. It's not just about the soil. It's also about really smart and efficient farming practices and the management of the farm. So soil health principles, I kind of mentioned them before, they're a great entry point to regenerative agriculture because it just makes sense and they're applicable across the world where farming takes place and also forestry to some extent. So, as long as you don't live on a glacier or in the tundra, basically you can, play with these principles. So the first one is to protect the soil. What we can see here is that every single place has some kind of soil coverage. And even where, if you have a keen eye, you've noticed my plastic, underneath the plastic is also waste wood material from a local arborist, mixed wood. So we never leave the mineral soil uncovered. It's always covered by something, and preferably it's being covered by green living plants, diverse living plants. I'm really happy about this picture. This is a drone image. It's not like the best drone ever. It was only, I think, 720p or something, not even 1080. But this photo captures the fact that we have zucchini, cut flowers, edible flowers, broad beans, and on the left, where it looks like we have some spare space, another keen eye will see those green sprouts of a diverse cover crop that was probably planted within 5 or 6 days of removing that garlic salad and bok choy that you saw in the other picture. So we want to grow these plants as long as possible because plants aren't using everything they produce through photosynthesis for their own growth. They share part of that photosynthate into the soil and feed microbes. This has been occurring for over 100 million years that we've had plants on the planet. They have been developing these interrelational systems so that when you look at this and you can identify the plant, you're not just looking at zucchini, you're looking at zucchini plus all of the microbiome that allows a zucchini plant to be a zucchini plant, the same way that our microbiome is so important for our own health. We came after these other organisms, so it's no wonder we share many of the same biological principles. And we also want to minimize detrimental disturbance. So it's not like you can't disturb your agroecosystem, but at the same time, we need to understand the effects of our actions and take immediate action as fast as we can to use biology to continue to hold on to the system, because without biology, you don't have soil, you have dirt. That's why there's no such thing as soil on Mars. Mars has a lot of dirt, but there's no soil, there's no soil carbon. There's no carbon there that's being fed by plants that are using solar energy to build an ecosystem on Mars. It doesn't exist, or at least we haven't found evidence of it. Surely doesn't look like Earth. We want to avoid repetition. I've added this one. You don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over. Nature tends to dislike the fact that you do the same thing in the same place over and over again, even if you're using regenerative principles. Integrating animals is something people generally don't like to see. There's a lot of upset about integrating animals. Integrating animals doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be domesticated animals, or that if they are domesticated, that you're consuming them to one degree or another. But it's a simple fact that virtually every single ecosystem on this planet has animals, and those animals perform functions. And if you don't have those animals performing those functions, the people need to use, as animals, need to do those functions. And generally speaking, in this 2024, that means using fossil fuels or industrial machines that are powered through some kind of probably even if it's carbon neutral, it's still going to have a footprint. We're going to be using energy. So animals need to be on farms whenever possible. And to sum it up, it's maximize photosynthesis. Here, I want to make a shameless plug for Novia. And you're like, oh, what does this have to do with agriculture? He's banging some rocks and building something here. All of this is to say that we're creating places that people want to be, and that farms are more than just places producing raw material. They're places that we live, they're places that we work, they're places that our ancestors lived and worked, and they're places where our children and the next generations hopefully will also be there. So we have a broad range of skills on farms, and regenerative farms typically try to bring the best ability and the interest of everything that's there, not just the plants, but also the people. And now this shameless plug is a little bit about some Novia projects that have something to do with regenerative agriculture. So at Novia, we have a project going on, this Norna project, which is looking at natural fibers. And it's not just clothes. Fibers are useful for many different things. And we now know that, for example, plastic-based fibers have a lot of consequences for the ecosystem, for our own health. And natural fibers, and how can we bring these back into our farmscapes, is a really important thing. And I'm really glad that we have a project looking at this. Myself, I lead an agroforestry project, so I'm not going to harp on that at all. But I'm really happy to say that we also look at the whole ecosystem. So there's a project that's looking at the role of willows, payu, in the landscape on bumblebee populations. Bumblebees are extremely great pollinators. They're hardworking, even more so than our little honeybees. Then we also, need to tie this information together. So we are developing a spatial competence center as well. And this is really useful for regenerative agriculture because we have the ability now to gain lots of data from remote sensing satellites relatively inexpensively. The data is even free. The expense is your time and effort to make sense of it and put it into a process to see how that's affecting your farm. But I'm really happy to see that this is something that's being able to, get into all of our projects at Novia. And then we're also involved in training students. We have a very strong tradition of training students in farming and in forestry, and we're trying to meet their needs. So we have a flexible program, a flexible study program that's been a real hit. I'm really happy to see that we've got more students coming to Novia through this, because we've seen that, everyone wants to learn. They want to make their world a better place. So how can we make that happen? So that's my shameless Novia plug for you. I see Otto smiling down there. I'm glad to see that.
Thank you, Joshua, for the Novia plug.
So I'm almost done. I hope that I'm on time.
Yeah, we have a schedule. So do you have many slides still coming up?
No, this is the last one.
Okay.
Besides
perfect.
saying thank
you.
Yeah. So what is needed? Regenerative agriculture is knowledge intensive, not just for farmers. Everyone needs to start learning about farming, and it doesn't take that long to learn the basics. So in order to have an informed decision, we need to know more. And we also need to be willing to make mistakes, work with people different than ourselves, and understand that there are no singular answers. Regenerative agriculture is heterogeneous. If we're looking for a top-down, how do we make this the same? It's not going to work. It's context specific. And then lastly, we need to learn from nature. So nature is the thing that's going to get us through this if we can do ecosystem mimicry. And thank you. So, agriculture is coming, it's changing.
Yeah, it was a very enlightening and very energetic and thrilling presentation. Thank you, Joshua. It was very, very enjoyable to listen to your presentation. I have to say that we have a schedule, and I know that some of our presenters have meetings coming up afterwards. So I'm sorry to announce that let's take possible questions maybe later after Kaisa's presentation, because we have to hurry on. But I very much thank you, Joshua, for your presentation. I think it was very good in combination with Raisio's and your regenerative presentations together. Very quick presentation of Kaisa here. Professor Kaisa Lindeborg is working in the area of molecular food sciences. She's an expert in many different fields, but I'll mention a few of them. Molecular level of fibers is one of her specialties. Secondary metabolites, polyunsaturated fatty acid and their oxidations, lipidomics and lipids, and then isomerism that includes both regio and stereo isomerism for triacyl glycerols and human and bovine milk. Analytical technique she's familiar with is chromatography and mass spectrometry. She's published more than 100 publications, and today her title is Gastrointestinal Behavior and Effects of Oat Beta-glucan Fibers. Please, Kaisa, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Otto, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this APOA Tech Talk series. I trust you can hear me and see my full screen. So yes, I'm trying to bring this, my presentation on gastrointestinal behavior and effects of oat beta-glucan fiber, also to tie with the titles today, novel and sustainable foods. So let's see how they link with the gastrointestinal behavior of the fibers. Yes. So in this presentation, I will tell you first a little bit why I chose oats and how they link with this novel and sustainable, about their cultivation, composition, and approved health claims. And then by using research examples on the gastrointestinal behavior and effects of oat-glucan fibers, I will try to explain to you why these are important for the Sustainable Development Goals, zero hunger, good health and well-being, responsible consumption and production, and life on land. So let's look at first at who is producing and who is eating currently our oats. So oats grow in more sort of temperate climates and wet lands. So Finland is actually one of the biggest oat producers globally. And it's also the third biggest exporter of oats worldwide. So we are the third biggest after Canada and Australia. What is important that in Finland, we also master the logistics for pure oats, which means that we can keep oats aside from gluten-containing grains, and therefore we can also sell gluten-free oats. And this is not yet possible in many companies outside of Finland. Still, the majority of oats cultivated in Finland are used for non-food use. And to make the sustainable development goals, we have to move more from feeding our grains to animals to actually humans eating the grains. So if you look at this panel here, there you can see the intended use of oats as reported by the farmers in 2022. Of course, like Katri said, the seasons are not same, and this might be deviating in terms of the quality of the crops, which depends on the seasons. But you can see that about 40% is only used for food, about 6% is for seeding the next season, and more than half is used for feed, either domestic or imported. And we have these consumption data panels from the 15th, and there you can see the consumption of different grains in Finland equally divided to every Finn by kilogram per person per year. And you can see the purple line here are the oats. So we do have the sort of domestic increase of oats about doubling in about 10 years, but still we can see that also the consumption of rice, which is the blue line here, is increasing, and rice often comes from faraway places. It is often consumed as non-full grain, so it is often deficient of fibers. So we would like to have more sort of transition for domestic full grains towards domestic full grains like oats, and not necessarily increase of also imported materials. You can also here see that some of quite drastic things are happening in these food commodities balance sheets. There is a lot of things happening. Some are related to the transitions toward more plant-based, but also some of basically are related with the inflation that has been going on quite heavily in the past year or two. Okay. So why it is always nice to promote the use of oats? It's because oats have an excellent nutrient compositions. Their digestible carbohydrates have a low glycemic index. Their lipids are unsaturated. They have an amino acid composition that complements well those of pulses. So therefore, products that combine oats and pulses are a competitive match to some animal-based products. Oats have both soluble and non-soluble fibers. They are rich in zinc, iron, and magnesium, naturally gluten-free and free from FODMAP compounds. EU and EFSA have approved several health claims for oats. So oat beta-glucan reduces blood cholesterol. I will shortly talk to you about what is the mechanisms, and consumption of beta-glucans from oat contribute to the reduction of both blood glucose rise after that meal. And also oat grain fibers contribute to the increase in fecal bulk. And all of these effects are related to the behavior of the oat beta-glucan fibers in the gut. So let's have a look how the beta-glucan polymer looks like. So beta-glucan is the soluble fiber of the oats. It is the slime in your oatmeal, and it is a glucose polymer. So here you can see beta-D-glucopyranose, which is the building block of the beta-glucan fibers and also the cellulose fibers. And here you can see the carbon number 1, which is deviating the beta here. And we don't have beta amylases in our digestive tracts. So once we have these beta-D glucoses linked together, we cannot break these linkages ourselves in our upper digestive tract. And here in the oat beta-glucan, there are also these beta-1,3 linkages, which make the polymers more gel-like, whereas if there is only the beta-1,4 linkages, then the fiber would be cellulose, which is much more fibrous. So what is special is that these beta-glucan fibers can form a gel. So this makes the mass more viscose. And once we have a more viscose mass when we ingest these foods, so then this is slowing down the emptying of the stomach. So stomach is a little bit like a dispenser. So once there is a slower dispensation of the food, so then the nutrients appear in the plasma at a slower level. So in this panel here on the upper right, you can see the blood glucose levels. So once you have a meal with carbohydrates that break down slowly, the blue ones, you have a more steady blood glucose for a longer period of time. This is related to the distension of the stomach. The stomach is releasing the bolus at a slower rate, but also here we have these beta-glucan fibers. And here they can also trap different nutrients. I will talk about the bile acids micelles soon, but here could also be digestible carbohydrates, and therefore their digestion, the action of the digestive enzymes is lower, and that also contributes to this fasting blood glucose level, or these glucose levels staying above the fasting levels and at a longer period of time. If we have a low fiber meal that is of refined grains, for example, or just sugar, there we have the same amount of carbohydrates. They break down so quickly, they are metabolized so quickly that the fast and large insulin response will draw the blood glucose below the fasting levels, and this can be related to less attention span, or the person being hungry earlier, sort of less satiety. Here we have also the action of the lower blood cholesterol level mechanism. So once these bile acid micelles, which are made of cholesterol and contain cholesterol, are trapped in this gel, they are not reabsorbed, they are lost to feces, and it is related to the mechanism of the cholesterol lowering. So also these oat grain fibers contribute to an increase in fecal bulk. This is important because once these fibers reach our digestive tract in the colon, there are a large number of different types of bacteria. And once we give them nutrients like fibers, we have a more healthy gut microbiota that is more diverse and more numerous. Once we give them nutrients, they make beneficial compounds for us, like short-chain fatty acids, which again are contributing to the healthiness of our epithelial cells and also, for example, our glucose homeostasis. Also, more bulk means more dilution of harmful compounds, and overall, these are really important things when we know that many types of intestinal diseases and intestinal discomfort states like IBS and also colorectal cancers are increasing in the Western populations. So also rich in antioxidants. Here I have a figure of the avenantramides. So avenantramides and other phenolic compounds are often antioxidative and have anti-inflammatory properties, and they protect, therefore, for example, LDL oxidation, which is related to cardiovascular diseases. So then giving you a little bit of introduction to our previous research, which I have already talked about, maybe some of you heard. So we have established, or we have research evidence that by using the pure oats enables adequate fiber intake also in gluten-free diets. And we have in our research shown that this has been linked with healthy microbiota diversity. So this is important because currently oats are only included in the gluten-free diets in the Nordic countries and the UK. And for example, Southern Europe or Central Europe does not really yet fully acknowledge that pure oats can be gluten-free. So here could be a lot of more possibility for feed-to-food transition also in these large nations. Then talking about the novel foods, of course, novel food is a legislative term, and these products are not in that novel food category, but they are new applications. So currently, there are more and more new application of these traditional sources. So here we have some triextradides of different oat lots that can be used as a sort of cereal or snack-like products. And I'm sure you are all familiar with the wet extradides of, for example, combination of oats and pulses used in many of the plant protein meal ingredients that we try not to call meat replacements. Okay, so I will then talk a little bit about how I see the combination of oats and pulses and what we have researched on this oats and pulses and gut fermentation, and why we see that especially combination of oats and pulses would be good alternative in this feed-to-food transition. However, we do have the issue that pulses induce gastrointestinal discomfort for many. We know that the pulses contain these FODMAP compounds, of which these galacto-oligosaccharides trigger symptoms. For example, in fava beans, there is approximately 10% of the fibers are these galacto-oligosaccharides. And we know that, for example, the Thursday pea soup day is a long tradition in Finland, and it is known that many people do have flatulence those days. But it seems like some people are more sensitive to these gastrointestinal symptoms and do feel that this is hindering their pulses use, where others think, okay, this is okay for me, I don't mind, it doesn't cause me discomfort. So we have been researching the combination of oats with pulses because oats do not have FODMAP compounds and their fibers are known to increase the fecal bulk and delay the absorption, and therefore we hypothesize that they may be a fiber source that could be easing the compounds for sensitive individuals. And during the COVID season, we run these surveys because we were not allowed in the lab, that what would it take for persons to choose more pulses, and what are actually hindering the use of pulses in the populations or consumers. Of course, this is not a random draw, unfortunately, so it probably drew persons who had difficulties in consuming pulses. But I think yet we can say that perceived gut symptoms do hinder the use of pulses in sensitive subjects, and this is actually quite common. Also, we found out that it is important to know how to cook the pulses, like Katri mentioned, or the plant-based products, and to make the whole friendship or family or partner to also like these products. So definitely the recipes are important, like Katri said. Okay, next I would like to talk to you about oat pulses and gut fermentation. Here you can see that Dr. Salalaito giving a breath sample to this hydrogen measuring device. And we know that once our gut microbes are digesting these fibers, they produce hydrogen, which is a microbial metabolite. So once the hydrogen is produced, it is also, some of it is absorbed to our bloodstream, and from there it is excreted to lungs, and from lungs it is excreted to breath. So we wanted to study the gut fermentations of combined oats and pulses compared to pulses and rice, which was essentially white rice, so a fiber poor. And so we did a 4-day crossover trial with oat and rice flour ingested together with pulses in comparing people with sensitive gut or IBS and controls. So we found out that ingestion of the oat flour with pulses increased breath hydrogen levels compared with rice flours. So here you can see on the left that there are these 2 red lines, which are the oat flour the hydrogen levels after the oat fibers. And you can see that once oat fibers are ingested, they are metabolized and the gut is actively working. The gut microbes are actively working for these fibers. We were perhaps thinking that the sensitive subjects would be having this small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and they would be possibly metabolizing these fibers at earlier stage than the control, but this was not the case. Actually, the sensitives and controls were metabolizing the fibers quite similarly. There we can also see the blue lines where we do not have the oat fibers, where we have only the digestible fibers from rice and the pulses. And there you can see that the gut action is much less. However, despite these differences, the sensitive subjects had problems digesting both both of the pulse meals, the ones with the fibers and the ones without the fibers. So unfortunately, we could not sort of ease in the gastrointestinal discomfort with the oats, but on the other hand, we did not worsen it significantly either. So we could say that the oats were also well-tolerated full grain source for the persons with the sensitive gut. So lastly, I would like to introduce the oat gut brain research. So we are continuing this study comparing the gluten-free sources, oats and rice, in a research project together with University of Eastern Finland, where we want to compare especially also the antioxidants and reduction of low-grade inflammation, and how the change of the microbial metabolites can also influence our vitality and attention span, and certain metabolites that we know how to that work with the gut-brain axis. But finally, I want to acknowledge Dr. Salalaito, whose PhD included the oats, pulses, and breath study, and the whole oat, pulses, and breath team, and doctoral researcher Enni Mannila, who is doing her PhD in the oat gut brain, and also my colleagues in both of the teams, and also in University of Eastern Finland. And you can see that I have now eaten this portion. My bowl of oatmeal is empty for this session, but there are some scraps left, so I'm happy to take a question if we have time. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. I have to say myself, I'm having a PhD in chemistry, so it was very enjoyable for me to follow. I hope you all also enjoyed the presentation as much as I did. We have a few minutes, not that many, but 1 or 2 very short questions is probably possible to squeeze in here at the end. I want to save 1 or 2 minutes for myself, then at the end, but please, if anyone would have a short question, then you can. Marianne, Fred, I think you raised your hand here, so please, Marianne.
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, hi. So hi from Novia. We're a few people here in the room. Enjoyed all of your talks. Thanks so much. And I was wondering about the there's some research on, or there's an exploding bunch of gut microbiome research, but very little on how gut microbiome relates to soil microbiome. And I'm wondering whether there are any plans in your future research to do this. This couple actually where the oats have grown and the microbiome there in the earth to health benefits and the gut microbiome in humans or other study subjects. Thank you.
Maybe I can quickly start. Maybe Joshua, if you want to continue, or yeah. So personally, I have not researched that, but we do know that, of course, when the microbiota is developing in sort of early childhood, we know definitely there is a link to living in a farm or living together with a domestic animal, or that if the environment is, I would say, too clean, and if there is a lot of antibiotics, that it creates a problem for the gut microbiota. So definitely there is some type of link, but I have not researched that myself, but it's interesting.
Thank you, Marianne. Very interesting and good question there. Johan, I think you have also your hand. If you take one more short question from Johan Bubakka, then I can say a few words very briefly at the end.
Yes, thank you very much, and many thanks to all of you, all three of you, for excellent presentations. Due to the short time, I have just a question to Joshua about the regenerative agriculture, and as we know nowadays, productivity is very important. We have a lot of people on Earth that we need to feed, and my question is, how is it if you have many plants growing together? I see the benefits. But the harvesting will become a bit more complicated. Maybe it has to be made manually. And nowadays, one can see big machines running over large fields, harvesting big amounts of let's say, food. And do you see a conflict here, or can it be solved somehow? Should we go to more local agriculture?
That's a really good question. So the photographs that I try to use my own so that I don't have to ask any permission. But this crop associations are something that is becoming much more interesting for farmers. There's many different kinds of ways you can combine plants for the benefits. And the entry level for that is to use diverse cover crops. So when you have time between your cash crops, then bringing in at least 4 different functional groups, growing them together at the same time in a plan. It needs to be planned. And then that can, over time, create many benefits. Combining 2 or more cash crops together to get those synergistic benefits is an issue, but it's one that's actively being worked on through research and on-farm trials. I really like the presentation on the oats and the legumes, because oats and legumes, oats and peas, oats and broad bean combinations, the seed size is so different that when the combine harvester goes over that field, that you can sort them rather easily. It's when the seed sizes of the two that are very similar becomes more challenging. And then, of course, you do have issues like if you need a pure supply chain. I mean, the best we've seen so far is like a 98% cleanliness of separation. But this is also a technical challenge, and also you just direct those sources. So I see this as an opportunity. And, the European Union, we're currently on our focus group on crop associations, how to bring these intercrops, different kinds of intercropping practices together on farms. So, it's easier to do in a vegetable scale, small scale, on a larger farm. Cover cropping gets you so far, and it's so much easier. So I appreciate the question. I think we're going to see a lot of neat things, honestly, coming in the future, especially if you can just keep the products together and you don't have to sort them. If somebody will take oats and peas together directly and process them to make a product, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the discussion, and very much thank you, as Johan also said, very much thank you for a very extraordinarily good, I think, presentations that was very enjoyable to follow. I want to mention, I promised that we will end at 10:30, so and we will do that. 1 minute still just to close the session here. I think this is a good example of how different organizations, different institutions can come together discussing the same topics, sustainable and novel food things together. We have the academic universities, we have the University of Applied Science here, we have the industrial represent, and I think this is a good example how we can go forward with these sustainable and novel things that we need to develop our society, and we need to improve our operations in these fields. It has been enjoyable and good and bringing me lots of good ideas and many questions that I didn't have time to discuss, but I think this is a good opportunity to continue and to remember that we have these campuses together here very close by and to continue collaborating and do cross-sectional different disciplines, combining domains and all these possibilities that we can gain from each other and by collaborating. Thank you, everyone. The recording will be available there. I tried to place the link there in the chat window, but if you Google Tech Campus Turku, there is an and you have to click maybe to the research tab there, and then it will take some time before we get this recording there because we need to put subtitles and check that the quality and you presenters, I think I will share the link before I present it there on the web to you, just to be sure that it's okay for you. Thank you, everyone. Have an enjoyable day and rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.